It was about 2 years ago. I swear it was like I was reading a book on Einstein to Graham, and I just jumped up and said, that's it. So this is the premise on my work. I believe that a baby is meant to have a natural childbirth. What it is that rotation is what's needed for switching the brain from developing a body, which is in the womb, to now learning from its environment. We all talk about gravity, you know. This is gravity, I get it. I can't drop it too far. You know, but we go back to the apple. We're not meant to succumb to gravity. If we do, we're guaranteed special needs or we're dying. We're meant to oppose gravity, and to oppose gravity, we need rotation. So from the first moment a baby just starts doing this with its hands, that's that rotation. It's the same thing with breathing. If a child is born with complications in breathing, I already know we have a problem with gravity. Because what it is that the squeeze through the vaginal canal and that first hit with gravity, because the gravity is different in the womb. We still have gravity, but it's the only place where a body can expand in all directions. And then, of course, there's complications. You can have multiples. You can have where the womb's not working properly, so that's where you get arthrogryposis. You know, there's obviously complications that can happen in utero, but strokes, and I've worked with it all. But with that, so it's that squeeze, and when it happens, when it hits gravity, that diaphragm kicks in, you know, and creates the first breath. So what I'm not saying is don't have a C-section. What I'm saying is when a child now is either too low birth weight, even though it came through canal, it's just too tiny to have those forces amongst it, or you have a C-section and they just pull the baby out versus a rotational pull from the stomach, you now have traumatized rotation. And now you can also traumatize rotation just due to genetics. You know, if you have a low tone, you have, well, Hirschhorn syndrome, you've got, you know, lens microphthalmia, you know, optical stuff going on, ROP. When that rotation gets traumatized, that's when you start having automatic issues with the legs, because we're not learning how to be physical beings on the planet. So with that rotation, what needs to happen is, just like if you go into heart failure, liver failure, you can't restart your own organ. If you go into failure, you need a third party to help you. I believe that with rotation. When I realized when I was touching people specifically, not to touch, but touching with rotation, and this is what I'm going to teach you guys today, this weekend. You're going to learn feet, hands, how to work with the pelvis and spine. If we do really good, we'll get to the head as well, you know, but I don't want to rush you guys. So, but if you touch specifically with the rotation, that learning switch starts turning on. So what I'm about to present, hopefully, is a newborn movement assessment. So just like an APGAR score, all babies get checked for movement at birth. That's my goal in life, really, you know, other than teaching this work. Because, and then with my son, that rotation was traumatized later in his life. So I realized I was doing it naturally with my touch, because, you know, I saw that certain touch works and certain touch doesn't. My movement vocabulary, my head is probably just top notch. I don't know anything about wakeboarding or ballet, but all I have to do is visualize it and I can see the movement. You just have to describe your son's surgery, and I know exactly right now how he's moving and not moving efficiently. And that's what the whole point is of living. If you have trouble sitting on the floor right now, something is inefficient in your system. Now, I'm not here to say, oh God, it was that car accident you had 5 years ago. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. You know, I was working on a woman and I was just like, what the heck happened to her head? You know, it felt like someone literally hit her on the head. And I had to politely say, like, your head's stuck. I mean, you had a blunt force trauma to the head. And not every baby remembers being dropped off the bed, like, you know, probably everyone's kid was, but. And she just jumped up and said, "That's it." I took my bike down a set of stairs and went into the basement wall, and I was seriously injured. And I'm like, "Yeah, that'll do it." 65 years, she just had this jam behind that mastoid process. But again, she's now 60-something, or whatever, maybe 70. For me to have her relive that accident, I mean, she's had life. I mean, that's not the whole point of it. And then with that too, being a mom first, I always saw the potential in my kid. You know, I realized he wasn't saying "Mom," I wasn't getting kisses or whatever, but he was my son. You know, for these people to go in and say, "Well, you know, Mrs. Turner, the fact that he's not doing this, there's no chances of doing that." And I'm like, you know, where's your crystal ball? And I wouldn't give up on him. And it really, so if I sound at all, jaded at therapist, it's not. It's just, there's just got to be a better way. This is your family, these are your kids, you know, and I can never wakeboard like him, and I have no intentions of doing it. I can appreciate what he does. We all have the same bodies as someone who's doing Cirque du Soleil, and there's no way in God's green earth any of you are going to right now get into that position. And this is why I don't study anatomy. I mean, I know where parts are, but, you know, this guy in a skeletal system, you know, we're no different under an x-ray, but he can do things I can't do and vice versa. And I think we really have to start looking at kids at special needs in that aspects. And the one aspects too I've learned for Graham, what does that child do exceptional? And just use it to your advantage to bring it out. And honestly, it works with any child or any human being, you know. If I know you don't like to be woken up early, I'm not going to come over at 5 a.m. and say, "Okay, you ready, let's go." You know, there are certain characteristics that each person has that you have to work with. Just like, you know, if I want a new couch, I don't wait till my husband's exhausted on a Friday night and say, "Sweetheart, I need to drop $5,000 or something." You know, like that conversation's not going to be one. After a nice breakfast, after a nice, "Hey, let's go look at, oh, isn't this nice," you know. Something stupid, I wanted my iPad, you know, and my husband told me no. I'm like, "No, get my iPad, it's for work." I mean, but it wasn't out yet, and I didn't know the whole mystique of iPad, like you had to order them about 5 months in advance, but anyway, you know, it was the two. And all of a sudden one day he's like, "You know, I've been thinking about it, you know, you really don't have a computer at your business, this would help you access your email." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, those are really good ideas." Now I was going to get the darn thing anyway, but I'm like, sweet, you know, at least now he's on board, I don't have to worry about it, but and I have to use that technique too when I suddenly say I'm going to be away for about 17 days, and he's like, I had to buy $300 worth of groceries at Walmart before I left. You'd think the Armageddon was coming. He wanted. So with the techniques and things that I've learned through movement lesson, it's not anymore about C-section bad, you know, "Oh, you didn't nurse, it was bad," this, that, and the other, because that's all, too, you learn with special needs kids, you know. Like, I used to paint before I gave birth. So I had one doctor's like, "The neurotoxins that you did to your kid," you know, I'm like, "My kid's this way because I ate Oreos, or you're out of your mind?" I mean, like, it just can't be that bogus. And if I didn't eat an Oreo, so what? What can I do now to help my child? I have friends that have ripped out all their flooring because of the formaldehyde, chelation, and I just can't say that it's a supplement that's going to cure your kid, you know. We are all here because of our movement patterns. And if you're in pain, you're not moving efficiently. Same thing with an adult. If adults' rotation's traumatized, I can tell you their pain's through the roof, like fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia, you'll see that the spine goes from, let's say here, and there's a shift in the upper spine. And you can see people that have fibro kind of hold their stance more like this. So when they're walking and they do stuff, you know, but see, I can't rotate. You know, I have to, you know, I'm walking more in this kind of fixed kind of method. And those kind of things start showing up. Some people are that way because they've had an injury, some people for whatever reasons. But again, when I touch someone, most adults are looking for, well, what was the one thing that happened that I'm this way? Well, who's to say it's one thing? So, And that's the whole point. So when you touch someone, to me, it's like reading the book, I start, and people have amnesia, I'll start touching someone and I'm like, oh yeah, I broke my leg when I was 13, I'm not thinking about that. That was 20-some years ago. I had this big, heavy-set guy, tall, and he'd come in with a friend, and I always feel up somebody. I'm at dinner, I feel you up. I'm horrible. Airports are the worst for me. Oh God, you see so many bad habits of people. So I was like, oh, just sit down, I'll give you a quickie. And I went to lift up his leg, and he went like this. Did it again. God, when did you break your leg? He's like, I was 14, why? I said, good, because your foot still feels like it's in a cast. Because he wasn't doing this, he was going right into like he was in a cast. And he was like 10 minutes, I got the cast out of him, at least whatever in his system, and he walked around and he laughed. It was the greatest laugh. He laughed like the Cowardly Lion. He kind of did this, oh. And he's like, I can walk. And I'm like, see? And for some people it is a quickie like that. Most adults, I say 2 to 3 lessons after that when you think about me, it's time for tune-up. I don't want that constant. I'm not their masseuse. I need to be there for hardcore people, and I've had them all. I can tell you so many stories. So that being said, is that enough about me and my background? Any other information you need to know on where I've been? These guys kind of heard it, but...
Well, I'll speak with that question.
Okay, you good? So, I'm fine. I was going to start with the feet first, or do you prefer the hands?
Thank you.
So we're going to be covering here, what?
Just with hands.
What, the hands? Hands.
I said any.
Oh,
We're gonna do both anyways.
yeah.
Either.
If I only had one body part to work on, I'd work on the feet.
Okay.
That to me is just, if I've only got you for your time, or I need to do a dog and pony show, it's the feet. The feet, a quarter of your bones are in your feet. Now feet, especially with special needs, pulse ox, IVs, and the ankle IVs, you'll really see a characteristics of cerebral palsy in general for the long, narrow foot. I believe from a lot of the birth trauma, the NICU time, it's almost like Chinese foot binding, because the foot's been, the pulse ox. It's ideally, if you follow more so Feldenkrais, you would want to switch that daily to give that's where the variation comes from, but you can't yank it on IV every day, and put it on the other side. The human body, babies in particular, don't do anything that's difficult or that hurts them. We do. We're adults, we're stupid. Kids are much smarter than we are. If our back hurts, we go to work. We have to take care of the kids. There's no taking a day off. If I'm getting on this plane and I'm suddenly whatever, oh well, that's the biggest problem or pressures that I have is when I step on, I've just committed to 12 days straight. I can't say I'm tired, I can't say, and that's just the way it is. And I'm not saying I'm tired now, but a kid, as you can tell, but more so in children with special needs. Also, adults have mind over matter. Adults don't realize mind over matter really doesn't happen around 16-ish. If you're a little rare on the rare side, it'll happen maybe in 12s, but most kids don't have that. Okay, I tried, I'm really going to get it today, I'm going to try. Kids wing it. They learn by play, by accident, they fall down, they get up, they learn don't put your fingers in the socket, although yours aren't as dangerous as ours probably are with the, but you start getting this dolt, okay, maybe that's not a good idea. Some kids become a bit too cautious because they've had a good fall and they start backing off. Again, I say our kids, my son's had, he's about to go in for his 25th surgery. So he's had a lot of, excuse my French, shit that's hurt him. You know what I mean? He's been cut open, he's been all of this. And so they're going to be protective in ways or frail in ways that we just have no understandings of. And for really to let a complete stranger come in and just say, hi, how are you? And this is what I'm really going to teach them. I've been teaching these guys but you'd be surprised with just your touch how you can create a startle. I can do it with you guys in 3 seconds. And I will do it. How I like to teach, I'll teach you, I wouldn't say good versus bad, just like a child learns, but I'm going to give you which feels better to you and which doesn't. Because that's where your intelligence comes in, going, wow, that's very pleasurable, and this, I don't think so. So, when you're working with the foot, again, is an analogous part, just like my hand, but the foot should be able to present to the floor in all different ways. The foot also should be, we're incredible human beings. First of all, if man had to design the foot, good luck. It's just, for what the foot in 3 seconds, I can jump, skip, fall. As Feldenkrais like to say, we can be complete geniuses and idiots at the exact same moment. The foot is really just proof of that. It's just, it should be available at all times. And when the foot's already committed, the rest of the system is committed. So, committed I mean by, let's say the foot's obvious and has spasticity in the toes and so forth. If my toes are curled, and I can do this with all of you now, if you take your feet, put them out straight, kind of the way, and to imagine a child that you know of, or your kids, and now curl the toes. And with that, but now try to get up. You don't have to get up, but just try to get up with your toes curled. You know what I mean? So see right now, they're gone. There's no getting past that because that right is too difficult. Now, you could get up with your toes like that, but it's going to take effort. And what's worse, did you notice how much you had to think about what you were doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I suddenly get up like this, if there's suddenly a fire, I need to be available with my system. If suddenly someone wants to dance with me, if whatever reason, if I stood up and talked versus sitting down, the availability from the feet, and even say, curl all your toes, just take just the left big toe and curl it under. And now, just with that, just curling the one toe, try to get up. And some of you too can't even differentiate to do one toe, I'm not going to take off my socks, but, to just do one toe versus, you can actually, or should be able to play the piano or do keys with your toes. There's a woman out there that has no arms, and you should see her just diaper a baby with her toes. I mean, she just looks like, pulls the diaper on, like, good Lord, I want to work on her and see what her back feels like. I love movement. I can watch any movement. I can watch, I'm just as much in awe with a person that has no arms and no legs, get around. There's a really great motivational speaker, and he's like, so you fall down and then you get up again. And the guy's just a trunk kid. You see, he's just the coolest. He's from Australia, I think. Don't remember his name.
Nick Vujicic or something like that.
Yeah. And the Hoyts who you talked about, I mean, they do triathlons. The dad runs and pushes his son in a wheelchair. Are an incredible team. So when we look at the foot,
Sorry, can I just jump in there quick? Like, why is it because we've never learned now that our toes can differentiate?
right?
Is that why?
It's not that we never learned. If you actually look at a baby, babies can wave and they can do all of this. Other than learning how to walk and run, as human beings in general, we do nothing to make our feet more efficient. We don't go to the gym for our feet. We don't think about our feet when we go play tennis. We don't rock climbing. We all think we start getting into this muscle mass, core, abdomen. Nobody thinks about our foot function. And foot function is the most apparent with kids with special needs because, to quote, just the bearing weight. However, just learning what you do on feet will just save your lives because the knee, the hips, the back are not meant to do or withstand the pressure of the human body that the feet aren't functioning. So, talking this week about someone whose spine is starting to crumble. And I automatically knew the person walks more like this. So what it is every time you take a step, it's like a jackhammer. It goes up the spine will eventually start to crumble and you have degenerative disc disease. So when I walk, my head should be nice and still. So one of the things I can do is sort of say, look at you, and move my whole body around my head function. This doesn't happen with our kids. Because again, they've already committed or they're trying to commit. So one of the things you'll start to see when they start to walk is they hyper-focus. Do you know what I mean? Because they're balancing and doing all this. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm mimicking. Mimicking happens like my son's low tone. When he gets really tired, he's more like, I don't know how his spine stays up, but he's just like, oh. And I have to like bribe him with a slushie or something. So, but to this day, even though he's doing great, and he does karate and Cub Scouts, if I were to go to Disney World and stuff, I'd have to consider a stroller or a wheelchair or something for him. Because he can't walk 10 miles. And why? I mean, I just can't ask that. I mean, he's hypotonic. I can't cure that. Can I have him work more efficiently for his system? Absolutely. So that being said, I have my great little app for those of you, if you are interested in what the foot looks like, or excuse me, should look like. This is also why I'm not a fan of anatomy. Your son's had hip surgery. Can't get him to look like this anymore. There's no reason for it. I'm dealing with a system that's functioning at this level at this moment. So to go in and say, well, his hips should be doing that. Well, they're not. They never will. So what can be done around that is that's my whole objective. If you've got rods in your back, I'm not going to say, oh, take them out. Now, I can say maybe don't wear orthotics or something like that, but... And most people think, too, I'll pass this around if you want, that the toes all just go straight from the ankles out, but you can see already the torque of the rotation that's in the foot cavity and how it's structured. And again, for man to design something like this, it's really incredible. So you can look at that, and also, you don't see it how much the heel comes from behind the foot. Most of us, if you look at our feet, you think, but because of the tendons and ligaments and such, you're not seeing the attachments of how the heel is. But the heel, and I'll be going into it, has a balanced structure. So if I'm actually on, you see it with babies, more so on their belly, they're actually learning how to cantilever on the foot function. So, again, I don't know if you want to pass this around. If you really want to know the body parts, we have a physio here and she can tell you all of that. But again, it's not necessary. Like I said, I just got so tired of people just saying where my kid should be physically as well as mentally. I just said, you know what, that just doesn't matter. I have to deal with, again, where is he most efficient and inefficient without judgment. The hardest thing to learn how to do is touch somebody is without judgment. We're trying to fix them. So, I'm not here to fix anybody. I'm here to hopefully offer opportunities. I would marry your husband. You wouldn't marry mine. I mean, pretty much. Like I said before, if I'm going up that tree again, I'm getting a dog. I'm telling you. I don't do it very well. We all have different lives for a reason. You have different movement experience than just because your mom was your mom. If your mom was very critical, you know what I mean, versus a sweetheart, and at the same time you could be thinking, oh wow, it's this way with everybody else, like my dad was. Part of the reason I am who I am, actually, people think that I'm really good for details, because I made an illustration with a minor in architecture, so I do have the art background, and I really do have an attention to, I can visualize too, just the way you're sitting, I can visualize you with a skeletal system with muscles. If I want to know what your pelvis is doing, I can do that in my head. Sort of like on a floor plan. Some people can look at floor plans, most people can't read, and I can see a finished building. So I don't know if that's where that comes from, but I actually have a very violent dad. And when someone gets angry, they don't get angry in a second. That cooks. And you get used to to see someone's fingers start to curl, and and they start to grit the cheeks, and so I think I just got really used to seeing that pre-violence happening. So it was just a lifesaver for me. I just had to get out of the area. Another thing that I really have to credit my dad for, because you can say, oh God, he's a horrible man, to beat or whatever, but my dad would ask me something to solve something. It was never correct. So I just got really quick on my feet to save my ass, excuse me. So I can come up with really 3 different solutions in 3 seconds flat. And you'll see that with the way I work. If a kid rotates, okay, I'm working on a bit. If a kid rotates, I'm working on a foot. And I just take it and work with it. Whereas a lot of people get into that, well, I was only going to do your feet today, this is what, And so you have to allow yourself just a little bit of time. Even if I had a preconceived notion of how I was going to work with you, I have to take into consideration how you walk into this room. Maybe you had a bad night's sleep. Maybe you fell the day before and you really hurt your ankle. There's no certain sense working on your shoulder when this is taking precedence. And then we are going to get onto the feet. There are 3 functions: heart, breathing, and balance. Those should be subconscious. You're not sitting here going, oh, good, my heart's working. However, when you're working with someone that's in that condition, they're on life support. Their functioning brain, it should be a subconscious, is now on life support. You can't run a business if you're concerned about your balance. If I had you up in a ladder and I was lightly shaking you, and I asked you a mathematical question, it's not happening. Your brain is on, I have to protect my central nervous system. And this is really important with our kids, more so with balance. And this is something I've been teaching Caroline, because what looks more like a spastic hard case CP, I think is much more issues with balance. And the more her balance gets better, you can see how, she's actually presenting her arm down, that kind of thing, versus just being, I hate to say it, more in panic mode. And when I say stuff too, I don't judge, I really don't. If I say CP, Wolf-Hirschhorn run syndrome, whatever our favorite post is, it's really only for your visualization. I really never look at anybody as a condition. And I also go in going, like I was telling you about the child with 9 visual diagnosis, and Diane saying she was blind. And I'm like, well, we don't know that yet, And maybe she would have been. But she still needs to be movement, so it doesn't matter. But for me to just say, sort of like Arthur, this one's a goner, I don't work that way. I was taught in my training, though, for hardcore cases, after a certain age, stop. And I could never do that, but you gotta try, And Diane's seen me with even adults, and she's like, God, I wouldn't even have wasted my time. And I'm like, I don't want someone to say that to me. Why would I say it to them? So I touch everyone like I was working on Graham or my mother or somebody. I try and give my hands the attention.
Because from the age thing, because I know also with us, they always early intervention before they're 5, blah, blah, blah. If you think about it, you can learn a new skill. I could go out tomorrow and study French.
Right.
And
or I started
it would take me longer, but I would learn it. Or, so the same thing surely applies with our kids.
Or what I like to say, it's like if every Friday I took all of you and said, we're going to go see the orchestra, symphony. Now, in 6 months, let's say, we were doing this every Friday or whatever, once a week. I'm not expecting you to say, oh, I want to play the violin. But when you're around something, you're going to have more of an ear for it. You're going to notice that the first chair maybe is off, or maybe you don't know it's a first chair, but you're going to start hearing little things. Even if I started watching wakeboarding more, you can see a guy just going into it, and you're like, he's not going to get the jump. You know what I mean? Just because of the way he just did. Now, could you say because he grit his teeth or the way his right hand was more taut than the left? you might not always know it, but the more you're around something, you just have an appreciation. So I just happen to be around a lot of special needs people, so I appreciate it more. And I appreciate it more. I realized in my training, like my sixth segment, just when you see a kid like this, they're trying to get dressed, and they're trying to, like Graham was like trying to convince him because it was just, that kind of thing. But the amount of effort that he was putting into such a small task, if we put that much effort into our lives, but still, I'm 50. I mean, if you told me when I was 40, I'd be like off to South Africa, like, you're right, you know what I mean? But nothing was working for my kids, so I'm like, well, I guess I'm now his therapist, And my husband's like, you're going to learn how to do this. He wanted to move to San Francisco. I'm like, you're right, you know. He used to, it was just like, no, this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do to get our kid this kind of help. There was just no question. And we wiped out our savings, and, like I said, here I am. So, with that being said, I'm going to start on the foot. Any questions, though? Am I talking too fast? Are we good? So, but, okie doke. I will probably start on you. What I'm going to do first is actually sort of give a lesson on one foot. And then what I'm going to do is kick her off the blanket. I'm going to start picking on somebody else. And then I'm going to show really sort of specifics. That's something that I want you guys to learn today. And then we'll break off into pairs, and then you'll take turns learning it. And then I'm going to guide you through, if you have any questions or that. Because I will be feeling up all of you this weekend. It really makes a difference to feel the touch. My touch is so gentle. It really is. And also, it's a non-purposeful touch. It's really that very exploratory. I don't expect you to be perfect today, but the more you feel up people, the more you learn. And I really wouldn't limit yourself to just quote people with special needs or just your son, because again, when you feel a foot that really can do something versus a foot that can't, instead of saying, oh God, I wish, it was more like your father's foot or whatever, but actually most male men think that they're special needs because of the way their foot is so limited with function. They're kind of like bricks. But, but I think you need that realization that there are variety in everybody.